Hello horror hounds, welcome to my horror house. This weekend I decided to treat myself to the original Fly trilogy because I hadn't seen either of the sequels to the 1958 classic, and I thought I'd report back on my findings. We start with the stone cold classic of the three, The Fly from 1958, the film that was remade into the classic David Cronenberg movie. And for different reasons, the original Fly is just as renowned a classic horror movie. It concerns the scientist Andre Delambre, who has designed a disintegration reintegration machine which won't get called a teleporter until the third movie. And as we all know, he eventually decides to teleport himself from one side of the room to the other, and unbeknownst to him, a fly gets into the disintegration cabinet, and when he comes out of the other side, he is fused with a fly. And out there somewhere, whilst he is a man with the head of a fly and the arm of the claw of a fly, there's a little fly buzzing around. It's got a man's head and a man's arm. One of the most interesting things about this movie is the structure of it. Right off the bat, it starts with a pretty grisly murder. Andre Delambre is crushed in an industrial press. It seems his wife has done it. She confesses. She calls her husband's brother, who luckily for us turns out to be Vincent Price. And whilst Vincent Price and a police inspector he happens to know goes there to question her, she tells her story, and how that murder came about is told in flashback. We go back to a happier time, his experiments gone wrong, them trying to repair him, find the fly so they can put both of the entities back through the transporter and uncombine them, which fails, and he doesn't want his technology getting into the wrong hands, so he destroys all of it but asks her that she destroy him completely, so that there's no sort of DNA material left of his monstrous self. And there you have it. It is a movie, I think, that loses steam a little in the middle with the flashback section, mainly because through necessity we have to lose Vincent Price for a huge section of the movie, and only get him back again once we get to the sort of coda at the end. But for all of that, it is pretty much a stone cold classic. It is, whilst a little baggy and saggy in the middle, it is a movie of striking moments, and the moments that hit home have to this day remain part of the popular culture. The monstrous image of the scientist revealed with the fly's head and the claw, and that head makeup I think is absolutely superb. Yeah, it looks a little bit hokey, but hokey in the best kind of way. The twitching mouthpiece of the fly mask actually gives me the heebie-jeebies a bit, I'll be honest with you. So I can forgive its hokiness, and the utter existential terror at the very end of the fly with the human head and arm trapped in the spider's web, with the spider approaching, screaming in that scream ringing out, "Help me, help me," which just, when the film ends, leaves you wondering all over again about the story of the fly, who slowly started gaining human intellect and human comprehension, and sort of understood its own dilemma, and completely understood the context of what was happening to it when it was trapped in the web and the spider was approaching, is the stuff of absolute nightmare. 1 year after that, they knock out Return of the Fly, which is set some years later and follows Andre's son Philippe, who wants to follow in his father's footsteps, and becomes interested in his father's previous work. We get Vincent Price back. The front end of the movie does an excellent job of locking in continuity-wise to the previous film. So even the strange jump from colour now to black and white, the two sequels are both in black and white, doesn't seem too jarring. It's very nice to see the laboratory set again exactly as it was in the original movie. They get on board as many of the actors to return as they possibly can for it. The groundskeeper comes back to give a dire warning, just really to sort of lock in the continuity. And then we're away, and really then the film sort of treads water until it can get to some kind of plausible scenario where we can have the same thing happen again. As what happens to the father happens to the son. The interesting thing here is while this small team is trying to work out how to perfect this teleportation device, one amongst them is actually a traitor engaging in industrial espionage to steal and sell the secrets, and it's his criminal past that comes back to find him. And that's when it becomes the most interesting for me personally, how he uses the matter transporter to try and do away with the proof of his crimes. He kills a police inspector who comes all the way from England to track him down and puts him through the transporter, accidentally combining him with a guinea pig, which gives us, I think, the most stark image of that movie, the guinea pig with human hands that he crushes underfoot, and you don't see it. You see the small human hands coming out from beneath his shoe, and hear the squeal of the creature, which is quite upsetting. One of the side effects of this transporting machine is that the subjects that go through experience gigantism. They grow. So when the son, Philippe, now is put into the transporter with a fly, the same thing happens. He gets the fly arm. This time he gets a fly leg as well, and the fly head. But the fly head this time now is huge, and because of that gigantism effect. And I must admit, that goes a little too far into the area of hokey for me. I don't particularly like the look of it. I think it's quite interesting how many elements from this film are drawn into and used into The Fly 2, the sequel to Cronenberg's movie. There's less interesting stuff going on here, though. Once Philippe is turned into the fly, it's much more of a monster on the rampage movie. He sets about to get revenge on the people that have screwed him over, and there's not the things in there which were so creepy and sort of existentially horrible about the original movie, where Andres is typing out on the typewriter because he can't speak because he's got a fly set, but typing out to his wife that it's hard for him to think. His thoughts are becoming strange. You see his emotions are more difficult to control, and this idea of the fly taking over, and he knows it's taking over his mind. There's really none of that in Return of the Fly. So it's a quickie sequel that's been knocked out. That is fun, but nowhere near the levels of its predecessor. And then we have to wait until 1965 to get to The Curse of the Fly, which I must admit I had forgotten even existed. Apparently it didn't get a Laserdisc or a VHS release. The only time it got a sort of home release was on the Fly Legacy box set, which is possibly why it is the least known of the Fly movies. And what an absolute shame, because it is a strange hidden gem of a movie. Perhaps at the time people were disappointed that 6 years after the first sequel we get a movie that doesn't involve a fly or a fly-human combination at all. Instead, what we do get is we follow now the third generation of this family, although they fudge it. I don't know why they changed names. Andre's son in this is Henri, and we are dealing with Henri's two sons who are becoming disaffected with following their father's obsession with this technology and wanting to break out into lives of their own. and we start with one of them meeting a woman on the run who she has her own secrets. He clearly has his secrets from her about his experiments and his past and his own medical condition. But they fall in love very quickly, they get married very quickly, and then go back to his mansion where he's doing his experiments with his father and his son, transporting between Quebec and London. And from there, what we get is a rather fantastic, glorious sort of neo-Gothic movie that has touches of Jane Eyre to it and Rebecca, and we have the new bride trapped in the mansion with healthy doses of gaslighting and her wondering about her sanity, and is she really seeing the things she's seeing. There's this notion of her new husband's previous bride, the memory of her previous bride, and the things that are kept in the stables, the teleportation experiments that have gone wrong. And it's all rather glorious. And there's a teleportation malfunction which fuses a couple of people together, which produces for us in these three original Fly movies the one scene that is closest to the Cronenbergian type body horror that we know and love in the 80s movie. There's some unfortunate yellow face in the movie that we have to put to one side as a product of its time. And really, I think the film should be celebrated for all the interesting things it tries to do, instead of just regurgitating another man with a fly's head. Thinks of how to utilize this transport technology to tell a story of sort of fractured interpersonal relationships, generational obsession, the sins of the father being meted out to the sons. So sort of sin as a genetic curse, and certainly the offspring of Henri have their own sort of genetic curse because they have elements of the fly in their DNA as well, mixed into this glorious Gothic concoction that really had me interested in where it was going from start to finish. An absolute hidden gem. Curse of the Fly. Can't recommend it enough. Just don't expect a guy with a fly's head and you'll be on the right path.
I bid you welcome.
I welcome you to my house.
Welcome to my house.
Welcome to my home.